Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Tips and Tricks to Prepare for and Master Your APICS Certification Exam. My name is Jessica Harity, and I'm the Senior Marketing Manager with ASCM. We get lots of questions from candidates and potential candidates about how they should prepare or what's the best way to prepare for their APICS certification exams. The truth is that is really going to depend on each individual and their preferred study style. But regardless of study style, time and commitment are two important factors in mastering your exam. I am excited to welcome today's speakers who can share their insights, experience, and tips about the exam prep process. Welcome to Bobby, Eric, and Dorian. Thank you all for joining us today. Before we jump in, I just wanted to provide a quick snapshot of our 3 certification programs, as seen on the slide. The Certified in Planning and Inventory Management, or the CPIM, the Certified Supply Chain Professional, or CSCP, and the Certified in Logistics, Transportation, and Distribution, or CLTD. APICS certifications are recognized globally as the standard of professional competence. As a professional certified with your CPIM, CSCP, or CLTD, you would be joining a highly regarded group of professionals, over 130,000 certified candidates across the globe. Now, I'd like to introduce Bobby from Holmes, who is going to talk about the learning system. Hi, Bobby. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for inviting me here today, Jessica. Hello, everyone. My name is Bobby Quickstad. I work closely with the team that develops the APICS learning systems. The APICS learning systems are designed to help you successfully prepare for your APICS certification exam. Our teams spend a lot of time gathering feedback from students on how they best utilize the learning system. So I'll share some of those tips and tools with you today. The APICS learning system combines printed and digital reading materials along with interactive online study tools that work in tandem with the reading materials. Today, I'll take you through the interactive online tools. You'll see the visuals here of the CLTD learning system, though please keep in mind that these features and tools are also available in the CPIM and CSCP learning systems as well. The online learning system is set up with an assess, study, practice model. Begin with the end in mind. You'll begin by completing the pretest to determine your current knowledge and identify areas of improvement. Then, based on your pretest scores, you'll have the option to begin your studying with a linear approach that follows the current order, or you can follow a recommended study plan to optimize your study time. And you will read the content and use the online tools to reinforce your knowledge. Some certification candidates will do all their reading online. Some will read only their printed books, and others will do a combination of both. We've also heard that many people will go back and reference their printed books years after they become certified to review a topic that is applicable to their job. When choosing to read the digital print, you'll see that you can view the content directly within the learning system, or you can download an EPUB version to read offline at your convenience. This way, you can read the materials while on the go and eliminating the need to carry your printed materials while you're traveling or commuting. When you finish reading a topic online, you can mark it complete to track your progress. And then you can take the section quizzes to work on applying your knowledge. Students have shared that the quizzes really help to build their confidence along the way. You can also utilize the progress reports to help you focus in on weaker areas. The progress reports show your most recent score on each of the behavioral, competency, and functional area quizzes. The Resource Center is another great place to go for helpful study tools, including additional reference materials, outside resources, and additional informational videos on emerging topics and printable flashcards. Many students also find the glossary to be a great way to improve their supply chain terminology or to clarify a topic they're currently studying. When you feel that you've adequately prepared for your certification exam and have studied all the course components, there's a practice exam you can take. This will give you a feel for the exam interface that you will utilize on exam day. The timed exam simulators, marking and reviewing features will help you feel prepared for your exam day.
Thank you, Bobby. It's so helpful to see everything the learning system has to offer. And clearly you can see there are plenty of tools that you can take advantage of to help maximize your study experience. Next up, we have APICS instructor and supply chain professional, Eric Schout. Eric, welcome. Not only have you earned APICS certifications yourself, you also teach others how to earn them. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience and background?
Certainly. Thank you, Jessica, for inviting me today. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, as you can see by my certifications after my name there, I think I absolutely am qualified as a APICS nerd or a supply chain junkie, however you want to look at it. But yeah, I became interested in the ASCM certifications well over 20 years ago, well over 25 years ago, and working at my company, Northrop Grumman. And I was learning about CPIM, and it was such a powerful combination of learning the body of knowledge in the CPIM course and then applying a lot of it the very next day. And that combination of learning and application really was a powerful combination that really it was very impressive. In other words, I was extremely impressed by it. As much to contact my local chapter and talk to the chapter president and ask if I could become an instructor. I was so interested in the information, and the instructors that were teaching the course were so knowledgeable. I said, I want to be one of them. So that's kind of how I started. And I've been teaching for the Chicago chapter ever since 1997. And so I have a rather lengthy career as an APICS instructor. I've taught all of the certifications, but lately my focus is on CSCP.
So with your background and having taught hundreds of students, are there any trends that you've seen from successful candidates?
That's a great question, because really when you talk about success is actually passing the exam. And many people achieve success but have different paths. Talking to many students over the years about what they did, how they prepared, and what things they felt were important, I've learned that students must know the material, first of all. And as Bobby pointed out, there's more than one way to do that. You can do self-study, and or you can find an instructor-led venue, which I think provides a little bit more context than a self-study setting does, because you have an instructor, an experienced instructor, someone who's actually done a lot of the jobs and has some real-world experience, but is also very knowledgeable about the courseware. But the students that attend an instructor-led class also get the advantage of the other students in the class and sharing in their experiences, because an experienced instructor really does do more than just lecture. They facilitate conversations, and they have people participate in these conversations based on the learning that's taking place. So I think understanding the material is absolutely key to success. But after going through the course, as Bobby pointed out, there's a lot of questions in the learning system. There's a huge question bank. And ultimately, the student is going to have to take a certification exam, which is answering questions. So the more practice a student gets in answering questions is going to help them in the long run. And we always tell the students to use the questions to gauge their level of understanding, and to understand the answers. Not only understand the answers that they got wrong, but understand the rationale for those, but also study the rationale for all the questions they actually got right, so that they make sure that they are in line with the rationale that APICS and ASCM recommend for that particular question. So practicing questions is probably one of the top two. The third one, which is the terms, I believe those students that spend plenty of time understanding the terms, using the flashcards, for example, in the learning system that Bobby just showed, is a very good way to learn the terms. Because if you don't understand the terms, when the terms are used in the question, you won't understand the question. And if you don't understand the question, you won't get it right. You may guess correctly, but in the long run, you will probably have a poor exam experience. So understanding the material, practicing taking questions, using the learning system bank of questions, but also using the learning system practice exam are very important tools, and the flashcards. And I also tell my students to hug your APICS dictionary. Give it a big hug, because the more you understand those terms, the easier the questions will be to answer. So those are just a couple of high-level tips.
Those are great. That gives us some great insight into preparing for the exam. In terms of the exam itself, have you heard or what are some exam taking tips that you maybe share with your students, or maybe that your students have shared with you that have been successful actually sitting for the exam?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we talk about the exam throughout the entire course. For example, the CSEP course is 16 weeks long. So over that period, the topic of taking exams comes up very frequently. So we're talking about it often. And one of the things that I try to drive home is the importance of scheduling the exam as soon as possible after the course is finished. Pardon me. We recommend that a student schedule the exam no more than 4 to 6 weeks out after the end of the class, because the longer you wait, the harder it is to retain that knowledge. You'll never know the material any better than you do right after you finish the course. So establish a deadline. All of us supply chain professionals, we live and breathe by deadlines. So if you don't establish that deadline for yourself, it's very easy to procrastinate and put it off. And before you know it, so much time has elapsed, your performance on the exam will be very bad. So that's step number one. Schedule the exam, and we start talking about that before the end of class. I'll start asking the students, how many of you have scheduled your exam already? And so I try to pull them along and get them to do that. The students that do that typically do well in the exam, because what it forces them to do is develop a study regime between the time class finishes and the exam takes place. And that study regime is practicing answering questions, studying the terms, using the flashcards, reading the material. Some students ask, should I read all the material again? And I say, no, that's a waste of time. Use your performance on the quiz questions to point to those areas in the book that you're testing week in. I do tell them to spend a good amount of time reviewing the material in the books, looking at the tables and the charts and the graphs, as well as the other highlighted areas in the book, because we don't all learn the same way. Many of us are visual learners. So going through and reviewing the charts and graphs and flow charts and tables and things of that nature also help to solidify that knowledge base. So practicing exams, terms, doing the practice exam, more terms. So we tell them to alternate, do some practice questions in 30-minute intervals. So just short intervals, because your brain, is a muscle, so to speak. And if you study too much in one time, you get tired. It's not very effective. So study in short bursts, 30 minutes. Do some quiz questions. Take a break. Get a beverage, drink. Go back. Study some terms. And use the exam content manual. I think the other thing you want to hug after you're done with your coursework is hug that exam content manual. So you're hugging two arms. You got your dictionary in one hand and you got your ECM in the other. So make sure you're hugging both of those. But the exam content manual will help guide you through the content of the exam and provide you with insight and help you ask yourself, if you're knowledgeable enough in this particular topic or not. So it really is a exam preparation schedule you have to establish in between the end of the course and your exam. Some people prefer to in the morning. Some people prefer to study at night. Some people prefer to dedicate Sunday to studying. It really is a matter of preference. Most people taking the exam are working adults, and they have lives. They have families. They have other things that they are that are on their plate of things to do. And certification preparation is just one more item. So you really have to carve out the time in order to devote the study time you need to practice that exam. So if you don't do that, you're probably not going to do well at the exam. So schedule the exam early, set up a study regime, practice answering questions, review terms, use the list of key terms in your exam content manual, read your exam content manual, and read it over and over again until you are ready. The other mark of readiness is scoring in the rough 80s, the 80 percentile range in your quizzes and 80 percentile range in your practice exam. Those are indicators that you're probably ready to take the exam.
Thank you, Eric. It's great insight, and it's so nice to hear your perspective as an instructor. For any individual who's looking for instructor-led courses, you just want to call up that you want to make sure you're working with authorized ASTM instructors and training partners. And here's some information on the slide on how you can find some of those certified instructors. So thank you so much again, Eric. It's so great to hear your perspective.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me today.
Of course. Okay, and then last but certainly not least, our recently certified CSCP professional, Dorian Evans. Dorian, congrats on earning your CSCP certification. As someone who has recently earned your credential, we invited you here to share more about how you successfully prepared to pass the CSCP exam. But first, why did you choose the CSCP?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be with the group today. So I went through and I reviewed all of the major certifications, the ones we've talked about already, and even some certifications outside of ASCM. And I found that the CSCP was really the best all-encompassing supply chain certification for me and where I want to see my professional growth go. So the CSCP really covers the whole gamut of supply chain, I felt like, from your suppliers to your customers. And having that understanding and ability and knowledge base, I felt, still being relatively young in my career, a lot of opportunity for growth as I go, would allow me to pivot into different disciplines if I chose to, but also really gave me the best understanding of, the whole supply chain from end to end. So that's really why I chose the CSCP in the end.
Has earning the CSCP impacted your career at all at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. So I earned my CSCP just a few months ago, and I've already taken a lot of the knowledge and topics from the CSCP to my role at Banco Dental. So as a little background, my undergraduate degree was in supply chain management. I focused my MBA on supply chain management, but having the CSCP was a great review of all of those book smarts, I'll say, and being able to apply it to real life. So one example is, going through and reading and understanding the supplier performance index metric that is talked about in the learning material. That was a metric that I was able to take back to Banco, and we applied it to our world. And we're actually using that as the basis of our revamped supplier scorecards. So not only is that being incorporated internally in my team and through all ladders of the executives within Banco, it's also being used to showcase how our vendors are doing. So it was a really valuable metric that we used and adopted, and we would not have had it if I wasn't studying or had studied the CSCP.
That's really cool to hear how you've been able to make an impact so quickly after earning your CSCP. So congrats for that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you prepared for the exam?
Yeah, so I chose a self-study program. There are great instructor-led and instructor-backed programs in my area, but just for my own learning, I felt that I could be successful with the self-study. So I dove into the learning system. It's been talked a lot by Bobby and Eric already, but the learning system has everything for you. The answers, the terminologies, the questions, everything is in that learning system. So when I got the box of books, it was a little they're pretty thick, heavy books. So I knew I had to make a plan, and I did that. So as any good supply chain professional, I love Excel. So um, I built out a plan in Excel, and I chose to study 2 modules each week, whether they were 30-minute modules or 2-hour modules. I made sure I got those 2 modules in a week, and after each module, I would do the quizzes, I would review the flashcards, and I made sure that I got to that 80% range really before moving on. So I studied hard, and then throughout the course of, I think it took me about 15 weeks to get through all of those modules. It was just constant self-discipline and dedication, but staying on track and having a plan really helped.
And when did you schedule your exam? Eric talked about scheduling it pretty early on. Is that some advice that you would follow too?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I scheduled it about 2 to 3 weeks after I started. Once I made my plan, knew the path I was going down, I had an end date. So, and I knew if I had an end date and I went in and I scheduled it and I committed to that date, that it would keep me on track. And it actually motivated me to work a little faster. So I think I originally planned to have about 2 weeks of review time after studying the material, but I was able to advance that and ended up having about a month before my exam date, which really benefited me more because I had more time to review. Like Eric said, I didn't go back and reread everything twice, but having a month to review flashcards, I printed every flashcard. I made a study guide. I needed that month to really do that. So having scheduled it early really set me up for success in keeping me disciplined to get through the material.
You shared with me that the exam was set up very similar to the practice exam in the CSCP learning system, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So the exam day itself, the pre and post tests are a great mimic of the exam that you'll take in person or online if that's offered at the time. But it was, a couple hundred questions. It took time, all multiple choice. I do feel that the learning system and the quizzes are probably a little harder than the exam itself. And I think that's good. And I think that's on purpose because, you really study the concepts. The biggest thing is to not memorize. It could be really easy to fall in a memorization trap when you're taking these quizzes and retaking exams. But like Eric said, understanding the concept in the material is the most important part. So once you feel comfortable with that, going through those multiple choice questions really isn't that difficult. It's just about taking the time to really think through it and understand what the question's asking. But the learning system's set up great to make you feel really comfortable come exam day.
That's great to hear. Um, so do you want to share any last thoughts or tips for people who are in the study process or maybe considering, getting started with their certification journey?
Yeah, absolutely. You can see some of my tips here on the screen, but I really want to hone in on, making a plan. That kept me disciplined. It kept me on track, and it really set me up for success. And, having a support team, your coworkers, your spouses, your friends, taking the time out to study one of these exams, it takes away from your life, for a short period of time. And having a supportive spouse or family member is really beneficial. I mean, the 2 weeks prior to exam day, up until the night before exam day, my wife was helping me through flashcards, and those different types of studying methods really helped. I was doing flashcards, but then having someone else kind of read them to you and quiz you, get you talking about the content and making sure you really understand it. The other thing I'd say is, find a good spot. Whether it's home, I chose a coffee shop. The only other tip I would have is maybe when you're taking that post test is to do it in a quiet environment, because I was a little surprised with how silent the testing center was, to the point where I could hear the clock ticking. So that was a lot different than a pretty active coffee shop. So I would suggest definitely prepping for that. But then at the end of the day, when you do find out that you passed, make sure you reward yourself, work towards something. For me, I'm a techie guy, so I bought myself an iPad after I passed it. Just have a carrot out there. The letters, the certification is invaluable and super important, but we all deserve a little gift after making it through this 15, 16, 20-week process. And it really makes you feel good about yourself and rewarded. So a lot of great tips out there, but I wish everybody success. And like everyone was talking, everybody studies differently, but the material is there. The learning system has all of your keys for success.
Thank you so much, Dorian. That was great. And I totally agree with your last tip. Once you pass, celebrate, because it is a huge accomplishment. And like you said, you put so much time and effort into it. You definitely deserve a reward after that. So thank you for being here. And again, I want to thank all of our speakers for joining me today. Attendees, I hope you learned something new and feel more confident taking your certification exam. Today's webinar and slides will be shared with all registrants, so just keep an eye on your emails later this week. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to let you know that the 2022 ASCM Supply Chain Salary and Career Report is now available on the ASCM website. There is a ton of great data to dive into, but of note, you'll find that the average salary has increased overall, and individuals with at least one APICS certification earn 25% more than those without. So if you were looking for another reason to earn your certification this year, I hope that was it. Thank you again for your time and best of luck on your certification journey. Have a great day.